Welcome. Today, we'll be looking at calculating energy bills. Bill calculation across the English-speaking Caribbean varies slightly across jurisdictions. Among these variations are foreign exchange adjustments, late payment penalties, and the implementation or the application of tax and or VAT. Now, whilst these variations exist, there are some basic considerations that are given in determining the majority of energy bills. Among these variations are your customer charge, your energy charge, and your fuel charge. Now, to encourage energy conservation, utilities tend to create consumption bands that are applied to the energy charge component of the bill. The lower or lowest band represents the average consumption of a moderate user to meet their energy demand. And this band is usually costed at the lowest price. And as the bands increase, bands that are higher, the charges are also higher that are applied. Now, while bands are created for the energy component of the bill, in those jurisdictions, those countries where there is a separation between the energy cost and the fuel cost, the entire consumption is used to determine the fuel cost. So I'll say that again. For the energy component, that is placed in bands. But for the fuel component, all the consumption is used in determining the final cost for fuel. Now let's take a look at some sample bills from across the Caribbean. Here we're looking at one from the Barbados Light and Power. And I want us to focus on the charges in terms of the details. Here we have the customer charge, which for Barbados is $10. Okay, so the customer charge is $10. Now remember we spoke about the bands. Here, for the first 150 kilowatt hours, that is charged at 15 cents per kilowatt hour. For the second band, and for this bill, the customer would have used 250. And for this band, the additional is charged at 17.6 cents. However, if you note for the fuel, and as we indicated earlier, for fuel, all 250 kilowatt hours is used to charge or to determine the total fuel cost. Now, as I said before, whilst there are some variations, and in this instance, the VAT is one such variation, it is applied to the entire bill. Okay? And of course, there are some discounts there. But for our lesson today, we're not going to be considering the variations. We're just going to look at the fundamental costs. In St. Lucia, the bands that they have here, the first band, 180 kilowatt hours, and that is charged at 86.7 cents. And for amounts above the 180, we have here, in this instance for this bill, it's at 37, we're seeing a charge of 91.7 cents. And as I said before, although it seems to be separated, for the fuel component for this bill, we see that the fuel, all 217 kilowatt hours, is charged at the 6.6 cents. Okay, and in this instance, there is a slight variation as shown. Yes. So the variation that I mentioned in terms of what happens to the bill, here we're seeing a tariff reduction And that may be something that had happened because of changes in oil prices, for example. We don't know. But there can be adjustments. And these are some of the variations that we will not consider. In Trinidad and Tobago, if you note on this bill, there is no energy charge separate from the fuel charge. And this is an excellent example of a variation in terms of how the bill is structured. Note that what they have is a consumption cost, and the consumption cost is broken down into bands. The first band, 1 to 400 kilowatt hours, is charged at 26 cents TT. Between 401 to 1,000, in other words, the next 600 kilowatt hours is charged at 32 cents. And above 1,000, it is charged at 37 cents. As we indicated before, here we have our customer charge. So for Trinidad and Tobago, there's a consumption cost, which is a combined cost representing energy and fuel, and the customer charge. In Jamaica, here, the first band is at 100 kilowatt hours. And above that, the charges are $22.33. And the first band, as we mentioned, for the 100, it is charged at $9.59 Jamaican. However, if you note, for the foreign exchange, for the fuel, fuel and IPP charge, all 263 kilowatt hours is charged or is used to calculate the fuel cost. We will not look at the variations in terms of the tax, and you have the foreign exchange adjustment, etc., etc. Okay? And some aspects of this bill or this billing system have changed over the years with respect to things like the applicable taxes, in terms of where those are applied. But the key point that I want you to remember is that these variations will occur on your bill, but the fundamental charges are your customer charge, your energy charge, your fuel charge, or a combination of your customer and fuel to represent your consumption charge. Now, let's look at an example to try and just bear out how we go about calculating the energy bill. All right? A Trinidadian residential customer has the following readings during the 2-month period, June and July. The current reading, 45,620 kilowatt hours. The previous reading, 39,724. We want to use the costing mechanism of Trinidad and Tobago to determine the amount that is due from this customer. This is just a reminder of how the bill is structured. First 400 kilowatt hours charged at 26 cents. Next 600 kilowatt hours charged at 32 cents. And above that, it's charged at 37 cents. So let's remember those numbers. The total, let's go through the steps in terms of how we would go about determining the bill that is owed. Step 1 is to determine the consumption for the period. Consumption for the period would be equal to current reading minus the previous. And for our example, that is 45,620, and the previous reading would be 39,724. That gives us that 6 985. So we have 5,896 kilowatt hours. Step 2 is to determine the energy cost for each band included in the total. Now, for the first band, so we have 400 at 26 cents. And that gives us $104. The next band, the next 600 kilowatt hours, that is costed at 32 cents. And that gives us $192. So we have the first 1,000 kilowatt hours, but we now need to determine the cost for the kilowatt hours above this level. So for the first 1,000, we have those costs. So above that, we have our total minus 1,000. And that will be 5,896 minus 1,000. That gives us 4,896 kilowatt hours. Okay. So these 4,896, this is charged at 37 cents. And that gives us a total of $1,811.53. Okay. So the total, based on the bands, would be 104, 192, and 1,811.52. And it should be 52, not 53. Okay. And that gives us a total of $2,107.52. Okay. So that's the total in terms of the consumption charge. Bearing in mind that in Trinidad and Tobago, there's no separation between energy and fuel. Okay, there's just a consumption charge. And because there's no separation, we just looked at the energy component, but for other jurisdictions, you'll find the energy and then the fuel. So we now need to add the customer charge, and the customer charge is $6. So when we add the customer charge, we now get a total of $213.52. So that's step 4. And then the next step is to calculate and add the applicable taxes. Now, the tax rate for Trinidad and Tobago is 12.5%. All right, 12.5%. So at 12.5%, so we have 12.5% of 2,113.52. And when we calculate that, you get 264.19. So that's the taxes, which gives us a grand total of 2113.52 divided plus rather 264.19. And that gives us $2,377.71, which is the amount owed by this customer. So let's go through the steps again. Step one, we get the consumption. Step two is that we look at the energy cost based on the bands. In this case, there's no energy cost, but the energy, so we have energy plus the fuel, which is combined to give us consumption. And based on the bands, we do our calculations and we find that sum. Next, we add the customer charge. And then finally, we add, in this instance, the applicable taxes, and that's our total for this bill. So in summary, we determine the components of the bill applicable to the jurisdiction being considered. We determine the total consumption for the given period and determine the final cost by adding the various components, which may include customer charges, energy charge, fuel charge, and taxes. Thank you for your attention, and you can look at examples in our next video. Thank you.